related to like, yeah, like how agnosticism will generally show up in like very low information content states of consciousness. Exactly. I mean, what you're describing, Daniel, yeah, the existential hot seat and kind of all of these like weird contradictions. So the thing I'll mention here is there's this concept. I think like David Pierce has talked about this. Definitely other people, even I think like Richard Feynman, which is this idea of like the medium of thought, how we think ultimately contaminates the very content of our thinking. And like the normal everyday kind of a standard state of consciousness that most people have, kind of a, yeah, dualistic thinking. Obviously I'm very interested in this conversation given you guys, but yeah, essentially the default state where like, okay, you do conceptualize yourself as kind of a self within your skull, roughly speaking, or in your body, and like, you know, the waves of attention are reflecting off of objects and you're reifying a world that way. Obviously that is going to, if that's how you perceive the world and you think like that's just how things are, like that's going to like severely contaminate the very content of your thinking in a way that is not transparent from within. I mean, it's kind of like trying to figure out that you're dreaming from the standpoint of a dream without having like anything to contrast it with. Now, I think like the medium of thought in some sense is something that we don't explicitly represent within the content of thought. And like that's one of the weird things here, that like when you're trying to figure out the nature of consciousness or the nature of reality, being stuck in a particular frame that has actually like implicit philosophical background assumptions, yeah, like no matter how you reconfigure your mind, there might be kind of like this implicit weird biases in the way in which reality gets rendered within your world simulation, and that is really really difficult to exit. And like, you know, you may actually be stuck in a state of consciousness where you believe that you have kind of in this I guess like almost kind of this Descartes way of like, I have assumed nothing. You know, you may believe you're assuming absolutely nothing, and still there being like very subtle background assumptions that are actually coloring your state of consciousness, what kind of like mental formations you buy into or you kindle, you energize, and so on. The state of consciousness that I'm aware of, that like actually does the job of like truly kind of like uprooting like really deep-seated background assumptions is not any psychedelic. It would be just like 5-MeO DMT, like specifically as like the one that is the most in the direction of like fully defabricating the world, or like really kind of like uprooting deep-seated background philosophical assumptions. But unless you do something as radical as that, or presumably something like Fourth Path, there will be like subtle philosophical background assumptions, yeah, influencing kind of the very way in which you think.